Well, hey dudes, welcome back to another one of my episodes. So in this video, I wanted to build a diorama that was kind of like a radio. Here is the radio thing I wanted to use, but it's got a knight on it, and I wanted to use the radio base. So, alright, I got the knight off there. And there it is. So it's a simple little radio that I could build a diorama on. I wanted to have some water or epoxy resin on it, so I got out some plexiglass and cut that and snapped that down to size. I marked out the part of the base with a marker on a piece of plexiglass, trying to get roughly about the right rectangle size, and then I glued on the plexiglass. It's kind of looking like it's about the right size. I also want to make a cliff or some terrain in the diorama. I used some foam for the basic bulk of it. See how that fits in there? So for the cliff face itself, I cast a piece of cliff face using some moldable plastic and a mold thing that I had made. Using some caulk and a nicely textured rock and some kind of starch or something. I don't really remember exactly what I did, but I cast it in plastic so that I could trim it down to size with some scissors instead of having to snap it. I'm not really sure where it's going to snap, you know. And so I glued it on. I also added some texture to the top of it, which was a mix of like I don't really remember. I mixed this up a while ago, I think, but it was like plaster maybe and some sand, some paint probably, maybe some glue, and probably some water. I also sprinkled some sand over the top. And so I wanted to build a robot that was kind of like broken down in there or something. This was a little transformer robot thing that I used for the torso. I used a lot of bits that I probably didn't really know exactly what were from, but the robot ended up looking alright when I was done. I wasn't actually real happy with it, but I quite liked the head that I gave it, which came later. I used the transformer for, I used it for the torso, and I think I used parts of it for both the arms. And for the legs, I took some legs from an action figure, and robot did them up with these Final Faction robot leg things. This is the head. I think it's like a drawer pull or something. Looks like an old scuba diver helmet, and I wanted to use that as the head. I used some EVA foam to kind of hide some of the big gaps between the head and the torso. I also used some baking powder to help speed up super glue drying. And I wanted to have him in the right position when he was sitting down, otherwise he might not fit in the plexiglass rectangle thing. This is a silicone mat that I sometimes use for painting. So I gave the robot a black base coat, and then I gave him some like bronzes and golds and maybe some coppers, colors kind of like that, and I gave him a little bit of silver color too. I also painted some rivets that I had used a like 1mm hole puncher or something like that to punch, and I painted them like a silver color, I think. I also painted the cliff face with a gray. And then I added like a rust wash in some of the crevices. and I think I dabbed away at some of it with a paper towel. I added some rust to the robot too, but some of the stuff that got submerged in epoxy resin, I think it might look kind of silly. I dry brushed the cliff face, I think with like a white or a really light gray. There's a little like cow skullish thing. I don't know. I wanted some kind of skull in the water. I 3D printed it and I painted it like an off-white, and I gave it a like brown wash, basically just paint and water. I think I gave it some yellow horns too. Then there was some little fish that I had 3D printed that I painted orange, and I gave them little white eyes with a toothpick. And I also put some sand in the bottom. I also made some little UV resin sticks that I used to hold up the fish. So I also had a little crab that I put down in there. And I glued him to the plexiglass on the bottom using a toothpick as a spacer. I didn't want him to float away when I poured it. But I used those little UV resin things to kind of hold up the fish, and they sort of disappeared in the epoxy resin. Not perfectly, but there it is. And once some of the epoxy resin had cured, I did have a bit of a disaster where it spilled and stuff. I ended up having to pour it again. But after that stuff had cured, or hardened-ish, I'm not sure if I waited until it cured. I'm not sure if I usually wait that long. But then I took off the plexiglass. And then I also painted the sand up top with a little kind of thick brown wash, I think. And I also had this tree, the thing I got at the thrift store. Also laid down some Mod Podge and sprinkled over some turf. I think it was fine turf. I don't know, something like that. And got off some of that excess. I also put that tree in. So for the ripples, and I also put a little river through the top coming down, which looked a little silly actually, because I didn't make a very good crevice for it to go through, and it looked a little silly after I cured it. But for the ripples, I put some UV resin on, shine the light on it for a short period of time, and then I would like hit it with the stick and move it around a little bit, and then shine the light on it some more. Made for, say, a kind of rippled surface look. There's probably better ways to do it, though. I also painted a little turtle. I'm going to put that guy on later, I think. And I also glued down the diorama onto the radio. I also tried to clean up the sides, I think, with these plexiglass sheets that I had, I think, spray painted black. There's that little turtle. And I think that would be a build completed.